Hello everyone and welcome to a different kind of video here on Tejano keyboard. I wanted to start off with first giving you a few disclaimers before we dive into how to get a more realistic brass sound for Tejano music. First of all, because if you happen to be watching this and you don't play Tejano music, thank you. However, be sure to, how can I put this? It's going to be very genre specific, right? So this might not apply to everybody, but if you happen to stumble across this video because some of the keywords like Korg or computer editing or splits, layers, whatever, this video is kind of more of a how-to and not necessarily might apply, across all genres, although I do think that it would be helpful and beneficial to anybody who's trying to get a more realistic brass section sort of sound, okay? So that's the first disclaimer. Secondly, I'm sorry about the fishbowl look on the screen. I'm doing with what I got here, I only have so many cameras, and yeah. I could have did it up higher where you could have seen the whole keyboard, but then you wouldn't have been able to see the screen very well, so this is kind of the best compromise here, okay? So take it easy, all right? What else did I want to say? Oh yeah, so this is the Trinity, Korg Trinity V3 Pro, which is an older keyboard, probably mid to late 90s build. And I decided to use this keyboard just because, sorry about that, bump the stand there. From this point on, a lot of the Korgs are kind of set up similarly. So whether you have a Triton or an M3 or a Chrome or a Kronos, those are all kind of like built off of this platform. So I didn't want to do it on the Kronos and then be like, well, how do you do it on the older keyboards? This is kind of like, you'll kind of see how it all kind of looks the same. The other thing too is that I haven't actually done this in a really long time, but I did that intentionally because I want everybody to see step by step exactly what I'm doing to achieve the sounds that I want to get. So it's not gonna, you might hear me go and kind of re-step what I said, and kind of fix a few things, but nonetheless, let's get started, okay? I'm now in combi mode, okay? This is Trinity Overture, but I went ahead and on the newer Korgs, you can actually initialize the combi, meaning that it basically sets everything to 0, like if it was like, like if it wasn't programmed at all. I couldn't quite figure out how to do that in the Trinity, so what I've done is I just went to the edit mode, and in the edit mode, in the first tab right here where it says, let's see, it says timbral parameter 1, what I did was I just shut off all the timbral modes. And what that means is that when you click on it, the internal means that the sound comes from within the keyboard, and external is you can play the sound on the keyboard, but it'll actually trigger something on the MIDI out, whatever you have, whether you're going to a DAW or a plugin, or if you have an external MIDI brain or module or whatever, or if you're using it to trigger other MIDI commands, whether you're doing DMX with MIDI and I don't know, running drum machines, different stuff, all that can be done externally, or even a secondary keyboard. If you already have all your splits set up here and you happen to get a new keyboard but you want a certain sound, you can get that specific timbre and send it to, or that specific channel, and not use the sound from within the keyboard and actually trigger it externally. Okay, so enough about that, okay? Let me get out of here for a second. So this was kind of based on the conversation that we had with Rick Fuentes on the interview from a couple weeks ago. So the one thing is that, if you're talking about multiple horn parts, the problem is that even if you get a really good brass sample, right, what happens is that when you play multiple notes, all the horns play all of the notes. and that's not how a real brass section works. You know, if you have a trumpet, a sax, a trombone, or maybe a couple saxes, a couple trumpets, whatever, they only play one note at a time. So the polyphony of the horn section is only as much as how many horn players you have, right? If you have 3 horn players, then you can only play 3 notes. If you have 2 horn players, you can only play 2 notes. You get it, right? So the bigger the horn section, the more notes you can play. However, with a keyboard, that goes away. You're limited by the polyphony of the actual keyboard, right? Like, I don't know, I forgot how many notes of polyphony the Trinity does, but like nowadays, I mean, you could play, 100 and some odd notes of polyphony, you know what I mean? And that might seem like a lot, but, if you're playing 4 notes and you stack it with 10 sounds, that's 40 notes right there. So those are things that you have to kind of be conscious about, especially with the older keyboards, because then you start running out of notes. Especially also if you're using the keyboard as one board for everything. Like when I play live, I use one keyboard and I split it when I need multiple sounds. I'll do the piano to the left and the like the lead sounds to the right, or whatever strings, and then there'll be times where I just want the full piano across the entire keyboard, and I have that set up too. So, but that's neither here nor there. We're talking about brass right now, okay? So one thing we were, to kind of achieve that sort of live brass sound is that you need to think of what your live instrument's going to be. So I'm going to do a couple examples of this, hopefully time permitting. I'll see how long this takes me to do, but my goal is to do maybe like a big band brass section first, then maybe do like a San Antonio keys and sax sort of sound, like a Jay or a Joe Posada or something like that. That sort of sound tends to be pretty popular. And by the way, excuse me, there's not one way to do this, right? There's more than one way to skin a cat. I'm just showing you the way that I do it. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's the only way, the best way, etc., etc., etc. If you guys have other ideas, be sure to share them with me. I would love to maybe, when there's more time, do more of these sort of videos, right? So let's talk about the anatomy of the horn section, especially a big band, right? To me, and I think most people who arrange horns would agree that the trumpet is kind of the lead instrument, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into program mode, okay? Those are where all your individual sounds are, right? Combi is where you combine sounds, and program is where all the individual sounds lie, right? And they're not, and I shouldn't even say individual sounds, they're individual programs, because even within programs, I think you can have like 2 different sounds, and those sounds can either be layered or they can be dynamic, meaning that like when you hit soft, it's one sound, and when you hit hard, it could be a different sound, right? But program, for sake of time and all that, programs for us are just going to be single sounds, okay? That's what we're going to call them, just a single sounds, okay? Program, single sounds, combis, combining sounds, layers, splits, all that good stuff, okay? So, and like I said, I'm going to go to the M bank, and like I said, not everybody might have the M bank. This is the V3 has the Moss card, which is like a modeling synth that Korg came out with for the Trinity and for the Triton series. I think you might even be able to find some of the Moss cards to install them into some of those older keyboards online. Nonetheless, let's find a trumpet sound first, okay? Now, like I said, it's been a while since I've done this, so you'll have to bear with me. Is there, okay, select by category. All right, and I want to look for brass right here. Okay, so there was one that I liked that used to be called like Moss trumpet or something like that. Maybe not. Maybe hard trumpet. Is that the one? Oh, wait a minute. I'm in the wrong bank. Let me get back to... that's why I couldn't find it. Bank M was the Moss one. So I want to do brass. Why am I... Okay, so let me just find it here, because apparently the issue that I'm running into is that when I do the category search, it won't search M. It'll just search A or B, which is whatever. But let's see. We could do it the old school way, where I'm going to just... Oh, what's this poly trumpet? Let me turn that down a little bit. I think it's this one. So all I'm doing with that sound is just using the pitch bend up. That I like how in the Moss card, because it's not, this isn't a sample, it's a synthesized sound. So as I'm bending up, it's thinking like a trumpet player, where it's not going to just do a continuous bend of the pitch. It actually goes through its breaks. And the same thing on the way down. So you can even do some brass falls, like, right? So you can do stuff like that. And all I'm doing is using the pitch bend. Up and then down. Okay. So that one's pretty cool. If you don't have the Moss card, sorry, but you can still use whatever trumpet sound that you have. And this is one of the reasons why that I decided to do it on a Korg product. And, well, I mean, basically... all I own is Korg, so that's why I'm doing it on this. But the reason that I only have been buying Korgs as of recent years is because of this one feature right here. Okay, now I'm going to try and see if I can... I'm going to have to talk through this whole thing because it might be a little blurry. So when you get into the sound, and this will look different for the Moss card to like the other... just the regular sample based sounds, though that menu will look a little bit different. But okay, so where it says voice assign, I picked mono single, right? Because you could do multi. Let me show you what multi is what we were talking about. It's one trumpet, but or maybe not. Let's see here. Mono single, maybe I'm looking for polyphony. Pitch. Alright, let's see here. Oh, there we go. This is poly. So this is, I'm hitting 4 notes right there. Okay? But one trumpet can't do 4 notes in a brass section, right? So what I'm doing is I'm going to mono, single, so no matter what I do, when I hit more than one note, it's only going to play one note. Okay. Now the difference between Korg and most keyboards manufacturers only have this. They don't have this, but it's basically the default. It's called last, meaning like whatever note I hit last. If I hit a low, or if I hit this note right here, and I hit a note above it, it's gonna jump to that one. But then if I hit a low one, it's gonna go to that one. I'm still holding all those notes, right? And then if I let go, it'll jump back to the previous note. Right? But I'm going to switch back to mono, or sorry, it's a poly, so I can hit multiple notes. Okay, so let's take, for example, Ay Mujer. Sorry. You get the point, right? You want the trumpet just to play the high note. So we're going to hit mono, single, and we're going to hit the priority to high note. Okay? So that means no matter how many notes I hit, this single sound, this trumpet program will only play the high note. So I'm going to roll into the high note. I'm going to go like this. I wish I would have had a camera set up for everything better. If I would have, I'm going to go like that, and then I'm going to end on the high note playing the so you'll hear the trumpet go through all those notes. And then what I'm going to do, and you'll see this hand, and I'm going to hit something below it, and it's not going to come through because it's only going to do the priority to the high note. Okay, ready? Okay. Now if I do that again, I'm trying to get back into the camera. Okay, if I do that again, I'm going to get this finger, and I'm going to hit a note way above it, and you'll hear that as I'm hitting that note, it'll trigger that note. I'll do a low one and then a high one. Okay, so here's the roll. Here's a low note, higher note. Okay. So we're gonna program it like this. I'm gonna write this program. Okay. So this trumpet will forever be like that, where it's just a single note and it's just hitting the high note. Okay. Now I'm gonna play that same passage of "Ay Mujer," where I'm gonna try to. And now you're gonna hear something kind of weird. See, as humans, we can't be like computers and actually hit the notes exactly the same every time. So what's going to happen, you're going to hear that high trumpet kind of like flip from a couple notes, okay? You hear that right? Okay? So you're hearing all the other notes happen. Okay, there's going to be a way that later on in combi mode that we're going to be able to delay this sound. And the reason that it's good to have different delay times is the same thing. If you have a horn section, each human being that's blowing into a horn is not going to blow exactly precisely by the millisecond at the same exact time. So we're going to offset some different sound sources, some different programs within combi to get those horns to hit at different times. So the ones that need to be triggered at a specific a specific high or specific low, we'll probably delay those, because if you happen to be a few milliseconds late to hit it, that won't register until later. You'll see what I'm talking about in a little bit. Okay, so this is saved. Okay, now let's go back into program mode, and let's not use MOS this time. Let's just use a regular sample based, whatever's in the in most trinities and tritons and all that. Okay, so we're gonna look up brass, and I want to look up maybe a trombone. Let's see. Let's try this soft trombone. I don't know exactly what this sounds like. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do with the soft trombone, okay, I'm doing the same that 4-note horn thing, right? And I don't necessarily want that to happen, right? I want say the trombone's usually playing the low note, right? So okay, so we're gonna go into edit, and then right here, same thing, the oscillator, we're gonna go into single mode, and then the assign hold right here, we're gonna go to mono, and then we can play around with legato and see what that does. So essentially, when I'm doing mono, every time that I hit a new note, it articulates. You know what I mean? So, like in the case of a sax player or a trumpet player, they might articulate the first note and then play other notes to follow before they articulate. And I articulate, I mean like actually hit the first note, right? Like, so they might go da 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 instead of da da da. Okay? So by making it legato, what it does, it actually doesn't re-articulate the note. It just slides to the next one, or just moves the pitch without actually hitting the at the beginning, the transient, or whatever you want to call it, the articulation, right? But for right now, let's just leave it like this. And so the priority, it says last. What we want to do is change that from last to low. So again, I'm going to do the same demonstration. I'm going to hit 4 notes. It's hitting the low one. If I hit above that, nothing. If I hit below that, okay. So now if I play that same passage, you see how it's like flipping a little bit? So let's try that legato. It's a little better. Okay, so we have like a low sound, and we have that slide on the pitch bend. It's not going through the breaks like the trumpet, right? So let me do this real quick. I'm going to save this soft trombone. So, and the other thing that you have to do is remember which sounds we're using, right? So we're using, let me try to write this down somewhere. All right. So we decided to use B28 for bone. And then the Moss trumpet, I think it was M01. Let me see. M1. Yep. Okay, M01. And that's trumpet. Okay. Now, to get all the other sounds, let's just find a generic sort of brass section, right? Something that can kind of fill in all the other notes. Okay. So I can just go here, select my category. Let's find a brass section. What's this modern brass sound like? Oh yeah, that's the standard Trinity brass from back in the day. What's a stereo brass? That might be a little bit better to fill in. So. Okay. And sorry about that. Okay, so for the section we're gonna use A12. I'll just put section. Okay. All right. So now let's go to our Trinity Overture in combi mode. We're gonna go into combi mode. Okay. And so let's set up some of these sounds. Okay, I want to make sure that the panning on all this, that they're centered, except for the stereo brass, the one that we use. I want that to be in stereo, so I'm going to leave that in program. So basically, if it's a stereo sound, it'll be stereo, right? I'm sorry that this is a little, I wish it was a little clearer. The autofocus is not working the way I quite want it to, but that's all right. Moving along. So M1. Okay, and let me go back and in edit mode, let me put that into internal. So this will help with something that's not directly related to this, but something that I wasn't aware of with this this patch right here. It looks like well, let's go back for a second. Let's go back to this. I'm gonna hit compare so I can see what was there before. Here. So before that was the timpani. Channel 1 was the timpani. So timpani was down at the bottom, okay? Let's switch it back to what we had. So I'm going to go to I'm sorry, not A, M1. Okay? So there's our poly trumpet, the really cool Moss trumpet. Same, and then the trombone will be here eventually, and it will make the brass section there. Okay, So what happened is that I was trying to play the trumpet here on the top keys. Nothing was coming out. It was only happening down at the bottom. And now nothing's happening. But we'll go into edit. And this is what we'll do. Oh, because it's set to internal. See how I have it set to internal now? Okay. I'm gonna save our progress right now and update the combi and hit OK. Okay. There we go. So the trumpet right now is set where the timpani used to be way down at the bottom, and it's also velocity sensitive. So we're gonna go to page 3 on combi mode, I'm editing in combi. So page 3. So page 3 right here at the bottom, it's hard to see, but this right here, right there, it says key zone. And the other one says Vel zone. Okay, so key, self-explanatory. Where on the key bed does it lie? So if you look right here, the highest note is going to play C4, which is middle C. So above that, I don't get anything. So all we do is that we roll that all the way up to the highest note possible. Okay, that way it's all the way to the top. And then the lowest note, it says 0. Okay, and this slope doesn't matter. I'm just going to set it to 0. Well, actually, I'll set that to 0 to all of them right now. And I might as well make... Okay, so it looks like the next two sounds are already set up for the entire board. G9 being the highest note and 0 being the lowest note. I'm sorry, I was looking at the bottom slope. Never mind. Down here at the bottom, it says C-1, so it's 1 octave below the lowest note on the piano. That's fine. We don't have to go all the way down to the bottom. So all the way down to the bottom, all the way up to the top, full keyboard. And you can actually see up there as I'm touching the first timbre, the first line up here is represented in that bar. You know, if I were to move that down, see how where in the keyboard it's showing me that it's going to split right in through there. But I want the whole keyboard, okay? And then so on and so forth. Each keyboard is going to have, or each program is going to have its own bar represented. And as of right now, like I said, we're only using these 3 sounds. No harm, no foul. Let's move on, okay? But the one thing is that as I'm playing the trumpet, I'm playing it soft right here. I don't know if you can hear it in the mic, but the key, I'm hitting the keys. See, I have to hit it kind of hard for it to come out. Okay, so we're going to go to Vel zone right here, which is the next one. Okay, now on the trumpet, the first track, it says the highest velocity is 127. So for those of you who are already familiar with MIDI programming, it's based on the bit system where it's in increments of 2. And I know you're saying, well, 127 is not divisible by 2, but for whatever reason, some MIDI keyboards implement 0 as the first number. So if you really count 0 as the first number, then 127 is the 128th number. Okay, so same thing with anything computer related. When you think of RAM specs or RAM specs, it's always like or bits. Everything's in increments of 2, 2, 4, and then doubled, right? Or the squared, right? So it goes 2, 4, 16, 32, 64, 128. Okay, so that's 64 would be in the middle, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so by the top velocity being all the way to the top, that means that I can play the notes as hard as I want and they will all come out to the top. If that number was below that, once I'm approaching how hard I'm hitting the keyboard, if I get beyond the threshold of a certain velocity note, the notes will drop out. You know what I mean? That's good for like if you're trying to have one sound for when you play soft and then you hit another note and you want another sound to come out. That's kind of like what you could do there, right? But in the case of what we're doing, we want it all the way open, okay? Let's set this to 0. But the bottom velocity is 95, so anything that I hit below a velocity of 95 won't come out, and that's why that's doing that, right? So what I want to do is hit 0, and it takes it to 1. Whatever. 1 or 0, same thing. That's the whole range of velocity. So I can play super soft, or or hard. So that's the whole whatever. Okay. So now we have. I'm hitting multiple notes. Okay. You hear how it's going blah, 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 because I'm hitting different. I'm hitting them at different times. Like my fingers aren't like a perfect line where I can hit. You know, some of them are longer than others. It doesn't matter. So what we're going to do is go to, let's see, which page is it under? Okay, so here it is. And on the Trinity, it happens to be under Edit, page, so that's page 1, and then Parameter tab number 3. Like I said, this will vary from keyboard to keyboard. The Trinity will probably be the closest second, like as far as where it is. So anyways, right here it's delay in milliseconds. Okay, so I'm gonna get this and I'm gonna delay the trumpet. I'm just gonna roll it up, let's say 30 milliseconds. It's still not perfect, but it's better than. The other thing that I'm noticing is that this sound is way too high for where it's supposed to be on the keyboard. So we're gonna go to page 2, where it says combination edit page 2, and then right here where it says transpose, we want it to be at 0. It was set to 12, so it was the same note but an octave up, right? Because there's 12 notes in a chromatic scale, right? Or 11 notes and then the octave, right? So when you hit 12, that's an octave. 24 is 2 octaves, and that's plus or minus. So minus 12 would be 1 octave below. Minus 24 would be 2 octaves below. Okay. This right here is where you can detune. I'll get to this a little later. Well, actually, let's cover it right now. So in a brass section, you usually want the lead instrument to stand out a little bit. And sometimes, like in classical music, the lead instrument always tunes a few cents sharp, so it can be above, like cut through a little bit from the other sounds that are happening. So let's try to detune this. Let's try like maybe like, we'll just do +4 for right now. Well, we might come back and fix that, right? So the last thing, now that we're here on this page, it says pitch bend range. So this, you can tell it how many semitones you want it to go down or up. You know, semitone being like how many steps down or up. I'm gonna leave the trumpet one to program because it does the full bend where you can bend it and it goes through the breaks, right? And then on the way down, right? So you can. Anyways, I don't know that we would use it for that. Okay. So you know what? Let's do this for now. Let's set it to 0 because I might want to play with the pitch bend on the trombone to kind of get the trombone to sound more realistic, right? And I'll do other things with the trumpet here, just so you can kind of, yeah, we'll get to it. Okay, so the next sound, let's go back to page 1, the timbres. This is what you're seeing here on page 1 in edit mode is the same thing that you would see if you were to just be in regular combi, but it's kind of like all right there. But I'll go back into edit mode just for sake of whatever. So another thing you have to remember that these all have to be on the same MIDI channel. This says GCH, which is global channel. That means that whatever channel your keyboard is set to, most of them are just set to 1, unless you've done something crazy that you need it specifically to be on a different MIDI channel. It's going to be 1. So right here, the next one that we want was trombone, which was B28. Okay, there's the soft trombone, and then we want the sound to be internal. Now, I don't know if you can hear it. There's 2 sounds happening, and one's delayed from the other. Obviously, the low one's going to be trombone. So I'm going to hold one note on the trumpet, and I'm going to, and you'll hear the trumpet and the trombone playing the same note, right? Because that's in theory, if I'm hitting one note, that's both the highest and the lowest note. Okay. Now, if I hit a note above that, you'll hear the trumpet jump up. and the trombone is still doing its thing, right? Now I'm going to do similarly. I'm going to hit that note, and then I'm going to drop down, and you'll hear the trombone hit the low note. We're going to save this real quick, okay? Just as a starting point. I want to go back and edit that trombone sound. It was B28, okay? And what I want to change was that legato. I didn't like how that sounded because when I was jumping from one note to the other, it was like ba instead of ba 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 ba. So we were talking about the articulation stuff. I'm gonna leave it so it does articulate every note because I don't want to just slide through the notes. I didn't like how that sounded. It sounds less realistic. It sounds more synthesized that way. I think having the articulation, at least in this case, makes it sound more realistic. Okay. So let's update that. We're going to hit save. We're going to hit OK. Let's go back to where we were. Okay. So let's see. We'll go back to edit mode. And then we're going to hit. Okay. Now I'm going to play that cluster, that Ay Mujer of the 4 notes. Okay. My bad. Let's go into the mixer. Here, I'll go back to Combi, just the regular page. I feel like the trumpet's too loud compared to the trombone. I could always bring the trombone up too, but so right now I took the pitch bend off of both of them, right? Let me show you where that's at again. It's going to be in page 2. Page 2. I'm moving the pitch bend over here. I know you can't see it, but nothing's happening. Now I'm going to just put 2 semitones as one whole step, right? So I'm going to put 2 on the trombone. So now I can go. You hear that? See how it's bending into that? Okay. The other thing that I need to get rid of, I'm going to go to page 8. I'm going to turn off the effects. There's so much reverb and stuff on there. So, this is something that I actually learned once a long time ago from talking to Jerry De La Rosa, was that he said that all of his sounds on his keyboards, he takes all the reverb and all the effects off, and he records the sounds dry, and then lets the engineer use as much or as little reverb as he or she sees fit to fit the song. Because like in this case, this sound had so much reverb that if the rest of the band is playing and they have less reverb, or a different length of reverb, it just doesn't sound natural. It doesn't sound like the brass is in the same place as the rest of the band. It just sounds like it was just thrown on top. So okay, so there's no more there's no more reverb now for now. We can add some later just for sake of whatever. Let's go back to page 3. No, sorry, page 1. Timbre page. So remember, we delayed the trumpet by 32 milliseconds. I know it's hard to see, but that's 32. Okay. Let's delay the trombone too, because you know how it sounded kind of sloppy, where it's like blah, 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 going through all the different notes. Let's do. Maybe the trombone could be a little bit later. Let's do 44 milliseconds. So now what we're going to do is, this is the last kind of to fill in all the other notes. Okay, is let's get that other brass sound, and that one was A12, and we're gonna make that internal. Here, let me sit back a little bit. Okay. Let me go back and see what's going on with the velocity. Oh yeah, you see the stereo brass, the velocity was not all the way to the top. So whenever I would hit hard, some of the notes would drop out. But anyway, So I'm hearing it in my ears that, I'm hearing in my head that the background brass, the filler brass, is too quiet. So let's bring that in. So all I'm doing there is, because the high note is the trumpet's high priority is there. I'm hitting one note and then just fluttering the other note, so it sounds like the trumpet's going. Right. Hear the trombone? Maybe we need more bone in there. Okay, so there's some other things that you can do too. Let's save this right now because I think that sounds okay. You have to get used to playing it. I haven't played this style in a while. I used to be able to get my fingers to be a little bit tighter where it wouldn't sound like the notes were flopping around or switching from pitches, but sometimes you might not want to lift up your whole hand, especially on the high trumpet. You might want to just leave it legato to make it sound not so blah, 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 especially when you're playing like eighth notes and stuff like. So I'll go. Sorry. I'll hit the other note, so I'll do this number. I'll go like this. Go. Here, let's see. Right here, I'll go ba and then hit. So if the trumpet's with the pinky, I'm hitting the trumpet down and then articulating the other notes. So, hear how that sounds? So we go. So right there, if we wanted to, let's go back in here. I'll go to edit. I'll go to I believe it's on. Nope. Here, I'm kind of searching again. Okay, so let's go to the bend range. I'm going to take the bend off of the trombone, and I'm going to go on the keyboard. I want it to go to program. Okay, so that's so you can go through all the different breaks, right? So if we go. See how did that? It's just the pitch bend. So you can get some of that. And to me, I still feel like the lead trumpet is way too loud. So let me bring that trumpet back a little bit. Anyways, so so if you're playing that, like what's that? Let me save this for a second, and I'm just gonna pick something really. This isn't the right sound, okay? I'm just using it as an example, right? So A. And you bring in the brass. So if you're doing it with my left hand and the right hand, I'm gonna play the single note on the top of it. So I'll play that. Well, I did that trill at the top. And then, add 6 right there. Sorry. You could also hit the chord like this down. No, you can't. I don't know, I was trying to hit that octave up. Yeah. Or maybe if you went... Anyways, I'm just messing around now. I'm not even really... I forgot how much fun that used to be to play. I mean, I haven't played horn lines like that, but, you know. And I'm not saying that it sounds great or whatever. It's just to try to make it sound more realistic based off of the characteristics that we talked about. So, what were some of the characteristics that we talked about? The horns don't play at the same time. They're slightly off. So, what I did is I delayed each sound a little bit. Plus, that helps when you're playing different notes and you're trying to trigger a single note that's monophonic, and you're playing polyphonically. So that delay also gives time for the triggering of the mono sound to not be kind of jumbled up with a bunch of notes leading up to it. That's one. We tuned the trumpet sharp a little bit to kind of stand above, and not only was it loud in the mix, I'm going to try and slide this way, but it's pretty quiet right now in the mix. And I think maybe some of that's attributed to the fact that we did pitch the trumpet above. I'm not saying that tuning high makes it louder, but perceptually you can hear that stand out above the other instruments. You know what I mean? It doesn't fall in line with like the other sounds. It's not perfect, right? It's out of tune a little bit, right? But... But anyway, yeah. Okay, so let's leave this alone for a second. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to update this, and I'm going to update combi. Yes, but I'm going to also... Why can't I? Okay. Maybe if I make a change, it'll let me rewrite it. So I'm going to just change this for now. I'll explain why. Maybe not. Maybe this won't let me write. Do I have to go through all of this all over again? No. You listen. So I'm going to save this, and this is the sound, right? For now. Doesn't matter. So let's talk a little bit about that J. Perez, San Antonio, Joe Posada sort of like sax sound, right? So to me, when I hear that, or like some old like La Mafia sort of sounds, it's usually like sax with some kind of like synth, right? It's like a synth brass, but not really. So let's do this. Let's pick a sound right now that's gonna be more of a like a saw. Let's see. like a synth. Is it a fast synth or is it just synth lead? Maybe. No, let's try synth. I think I had one that was like a power saw or some. Like I said, it's been years since I used this board, but okay, not any of those. Maybe it is a synth lead. Let's try this. No, not that either. Yeah, let's not do. Let's go back to the other synth. I might have to just pick whatever sort of. What's this analog power? That works. That'll be perfect for what we're trying to do. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this Trinity Overture. I want to keep that stereo brass, and I'm going to layer it with the, what number was it? 89, A89. Okay, so I'm going to take the trombone, I'm going to leave the trombone aside, and I'm going to get 89. Why am I doing it this way? This is the hard way. I could have just hit the number and enter. Okay. So right off of here, I'll turn that trumpet off here. Let's go into here. I'm going to turn that trumpet off. Okay, so we've got the analog and the brass. We don't necessarily need the delay now. So where was that delay? Oh, it was in page 1, timbre. Okay, there. I'm going to take it to 0 delay. But the one thing that I'm hearing is that the pitch of that synth is too low. It's an octave too low. So I'm going to go back here in page 2 under pitch, and I'm going to give it a plus 12. Okay. And by the way, this isn't exactly like this. I wouldn't necessarily use this setup for playing like a J song, but this is just kind of trying to get you close. It's trying to get you close. Okay. Okay. So we're gonna save this for now. And now let's go back to let's find we're back in program mode. Okay. We're finding an alto sax sound. So let's go to select by category. Let's find woodwind reeds, and let's find alto sax, which, if I'm not mistaken, oh no, it's not. Okay, so I'm going to go to edit. And the only thing I'm going to do to this is I'm going to hit mono, so it's monophonic. So I can only hit one note at a time, right? I might want to not articulate each note. No, I think I do because we'll try it. Let's do it without. But the priority, we want it to be high, because like whenever there's sax and keyboards, like a David Lee or something like that, you want the sax to always play the high note, right? Maybe we'll do a David Lee example here in a second, right? So I'm going to hit save on this, and the alto sax, and just so for our records, alto sax is A2, okay? So now I'm going to go back to Combi, to this Trinity Overture, or whatever. We can rename it something else too. We'll do that later. But we said A2. Now, one thing to remember about this setup now, let's talk through it, okay? We have the alto sax, which is monophonic because the sax only plays one note. We have the synth saw sort of sound, kind of an analog synth sort of thing. We also have a stereo brass, okay? We might have to work on the, okay, here, I'm going to bring the, I'm going to make that power, the panning on that is programmed so it can be stereo, right? Not just mono. I think with the Triton series, it wasn't like you could pan or be stereo. If the program was already in stereo, it was forever in stereo. In the Triton series, excuse me. But in the Trinity, yeah, it was weird. Like you could either pan it wherever you wanted it to be, or you could use it as like a stereo sort of thing. But you'd have to set it to program to be there. Anyways, so the sax is still detuned because I put it on the same as the trumpet, and it's also delayed, so it's not going to be perfectly right on time with everything else. Okay, so that's where we're at so far. Let's see. Let's balance some of these out. That's more sax. I'm going to bring some of that. And that brass is too loud. Let's bring some more sax in. Maybe bring back some of that soft. You know what? I'm a dummy. Let's go to edit. Go to... the sax is off. That's why I couldn't hear any of it. Whoa. That was loud. Let's go back to program. Let's bring back that sax. You could do a trill on the sax like... Like I said, you have to really practice to get that sort of, like, I haven't played like that style in a long time where I needed to kind of mock the sax at the same time, right? Or, do you hear the sax up on top? That's not a really good sax sound either. I mean, if you had like a really good sax sample, I mean, that would sound a lot better. Okay, so this is like kind of like an example of like a Joe Posada with like cluster chords. Although I understand Joe Posada plays tenor but not alto, or maybe he plays alto, but in his recordings it's usually tenor, right? But and then you go to single note. See how the sax still playing the high note when I went, and I went. But as soon as I let go, it jumps down to the lowest note because that's technically, like I said, in theory, the highest note, right? What other examples could I use with that sort of? What are some other songs that are like sax and keys? I'm trying to think here. Something that's not Jay, something that's not David Lee, something that like maybe like Si Lo Quieres by La Diferencia. Like I said, I'm not saying that this sounds good, right? I'm not saying that this is a show ready, like this is, but just to kind of show you what can happen when you start thinking about, okay, why does the keyboard sound like a keyboard and not like the real acoustic instrument, right? Well, because of the things we talked about. Certain instruments can only play one note, especially acoustic horns, right? Horns are, single note sources, so you have to be able to make them single note sources. The other thing too is that no matter how tight a group gets, we're all human. You can't get like instant, like to the millisecond perfection between two instruments, or at least between two human beings, right? Unless they're electronic, and in which case that's what makes it sound fake, is the fact that it's too perfect. That's why drum samples will never sound like real drums. That's why, you know, it's just, that's the way it is. If it sounds too perfect, it's not going to sound good. Well, let's see here. This video has been going on for about an hour. I think I'm going to cut it right here. I don't know. Did you guys like how some of it sounded? I mean, don't give it a thumbs down if you don't like how it sounded, you know what I mean? Because this was more about how to program this stuff, right? Be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your mom to subscribe too. That way we can get more. I'm just kidding. Tell everybody to subscribe, whether they, you know, play Tejano music or not. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out here too that's non-Tejano music related, like comes to harmony and jazz theory and stuff like that. Excuse my sloppy playing. I don't play those tunes. I was just kind of trying to, like, off the bat I mean, actually some of them I do kind of play, and they were not that good, so my apologies for the playing. But yeah, if you guys want to see more tutorials like this, let me know. And sorry about the setup too. Like I said, I was kind of hoping that you guys could have seen my hands on the board, but man, you couldn't really see the screen, and even so, you can't really, it's not really that great. But all right, guys, have a good one.